Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reid, and this is the review of episode 2 to DC Studios' Lanterns, which is currently on HBO and HBO Max. This episode is entitled Trust Fall, and we're coming off of a dynamic premiere, a really, really good pilot episode of Lanterns, where the, not the post credit, but the final scene of that episode left a lot of people kind of, like, you know, where are we going with this? With the death of Hal Jordan, which takes place 10 years from where this show is currently set. And I was a little taken aback by that when I first watched it. But as the week went on, I thought about it a little more. I was like, okay, that makes sense. You know, it is what it is. You know, we're going with the Jon Stewart Green Lantern in this particular cinematic universe. So, I mean, what other reason is there to have Hal Jordan around? Plus, you got Guy Garner still floating around there as well. So it was just jarring to to kind of get that in that first episode. But I can't say that I'm all right with it. We don't revisit that in this episode. We don't go back or flash forward into 2026. We stay primarily in 2016, where the events that's taking place in Rushville, Nebraska is happening. In this second episode, we're going through this slow burn investigation that is taking place, and it takes a kind of a dramatic turn in this episode when Jon Stewart is abducted by a group of human disguised extraterrestrials, or aliens, if you will, and their leader reveals a kind of a terrifying piece of DC lore. They're on the hunt for a manhunter. Now, when you hear manhunter, those of us who are DC nuts, we immediately go to Martian Manhunter, you know, John Jones. But I don't think that's the manhunter they're actually hunting. Or it could be. I don't know. We'll have to see. But John Jones isn't a villain. You know, Martian Manhunter isn't a villain. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds going forward. Now, we do know that, once again, those of us who are DC fans, that I think is Antrin is his name. The villain, but the guy that was introduced in this episode, he's a villain. He is a villain in the comics. But this Manhunter is kind of this rogue, synthetic, peacekeeping android created by the Guardians of the Universe, you know, before the Green Lantern Corps was formed. And so, Anton, I think that's his name, he's threatening to blow up the entire town unless the Manhunter is identified in a 2-day period, 48 hours. That's the time limit he gives to Jon Jones. Not Jon Jones, Jon Stewart. And so meanwhile, we got Hal Jordan. He discovers this strange alien detector hidden around the city. They got all of these, you think they're metal detectors, but actually they're alien detectors. And he kind of gets into a clash with the sheriff, played by Kelly McDonald on the show. And we find out throughout the show that she is originally from Gotham. And so, you know, once again, those of us who are DC nuts, we're trying to put the pieces together. Who is she originally? You know, who is she in the DC lore? Well, her name is Carrie Kane. And if you know DC Comics, Kane, the last name Kane, they are related to the Waynes. I think they're cousins, if I'm not mistaken. I think Carrie Kane. Uh, I want to say she ends up being Batwoman or something to that effect, or her sister is Batwoman. I don't know. I gotta brush up on my comic book uh, uh, knowledge there, but I know the Kanes are related to the Waynes in the comics. But she harbors her own secrets, and we still are trying to unfold that. That could be a part of it. I'm not saying that we're going to be introduced to Bruce Wayne. I know everybody is waiting patiently for this DC universe to introduce their Batman. I don't think that that's going to happen on this show or anytime soon, to be 100% honest with you. But we did hear her on the phone in episode 1 talking to somebody named Barb. And so it could be Barbara Gordon. It could be that connection there. I don't know, man. I don't know what we're doing. It's so many questions on this show. We got all type of madness happening, and I'm all for it. Uh, John Jon Stewart, we find that he has this untapped power here. He showcased this feat of willpower that I haven't seen in any Green Lantern adaptation, where his concentration is beyond disbelief. It's almost like it. I don't think that's possible, but I haven't seen it done in the comics. But I'm pretty not to this degree, where he manifests the small little bird when he was trying to fly in the beginning of the episode, and he kept that bird alive throughout the entire episode, even when he was in Coast City. When he went to Coast City to retrieve the lantern, that bird was still there. And this is with the ring not having much power. And Hal Jordan had the ring. He didn't have the ring, but he still had the willpower to keep that bird alive. That's just a testament on how powerful a Green Lantern Jon Stewart will be in this universe. I'm excited by that. That was probably the most impressive thing that I got from this episode. I really loved how they showcased that, and that's just a tip of the iceberg. We get our debut of Sinestro on this episode, when we get the shocking news of the Manhunter given to Hal Jordan by Jon Stewart, and he flies off to Aura to investigate Sinestro and see what he knows about the Manhunters. That's was the last scene of this episode. I was mad when the episode started rolling the credits at that point, because I wanted to see more of that. Sinestro in the past, in the only adaptation, live action adaptation, was in that Ryan Reynolds film from, I don't know, 20 years ago maybe. And I think it was Mark Strong who played Sinestro, who would have been awesome had they done it right. Because he didn't become Sinestro till the very end of that movie. And I would have loved to see Mark Strong as Sinestro. That was perfect casting. Just unfortunately, it was an imperfect film. But we got introduced to him on this show, to see the dynamic between Sinestro and Hal Jordan. In case you don't know, in the comics, Sinestro is the one who trained Hal when he was a Green Lantern. But Sinestro went to the dark side. And Hal was the one who had to shut him down. Sinestro is Hal Jordan's biggest enemy. That's his Joker. So this is going to be a cool little scene, not scene, but episode, because I would imagine it's going to be an episode that they kind of flush out their history and moving forward and trying to find out what's actually going on in Russville and all this other good stuff. And so I'm looking forward to that moving forward as well. As far as theorizing who the Manhunter could be in Rushville, I've been beating my head against the wall since the episode went off. Like who in Rushville could possibly be the Manhunter? If it's Martian Manhunter, if it's John Jones Manhunter, I don't know. I don't know if it's somebody we've met. It could be a plethora of people. If it's somebody we haven't met yet on the show, it's possibly the one who's funding that the ranch that the Macon family is a part of, because he's so tight-lipped about who is funding it. Who else couldn't provide the Macons with those alien technology, metal detectors or alien detectors? Who else can do that? Because Hal Jordan said, I've been all over the galaxy and I haven't seen technology like this. And so how would a small town in Nebraska get their hands on this alien technology? And so it's quite possible that they're getting it from the Manhunter. Another possibility, which would be awkward, because my mind immediately went to this person because it's the most out of place person in Russville, and that is Macon's wife, the one who Jon Stewart slept with. She just seemed, is more to her than what meets the eye. There's more to her story here, and so clearly she's not who she claims to be. It's you got that from episode 1, scene 1 she was in. You knew that there was more to this woman or alien, whatever the case may be. And so it could be her. Another possibility, it could be the lawyer, the son, played by Jason Ritter. Maybe he's the Manhunter, but he's the son, but you never see him and the head Macon interact, at least not yet, through 2 episodes. Really, you haven't seen him and his wife, Carrie, interact with one another. So what's going on there? It's a lot of possibilities. Now, these are people we've met. Now, like I said, it could be somebody we haven't met yet. It's still the mystery of when Hal Jordan got shot in this episode and he's in the hospital and there's absolutely nobody in this hospital. I understand it's a small town, but people get hurt, sick all the time. And you mean to tell me nobody is in this hospital? Not one soul? You didn't even see doctors walking around, nurses, custodians. You didn't see anybody walking around this hospital. All the equipment is still wrapped up in plastic, like they just opened it yesterday. It's something nefarious going on in this town. It's something crazy about Russville, Nebraska, and everybody wants Hal gone. They want him out of this town by any means. They just want him gone because whatever it is, Hal is going to blow it up. And judging by last week's episode, the first episode, apparently it's still going on 10 years later. It still isn't solved. So I don't know. I honestly don't know what this mystery is, how it's going to completely unfold. But whatever it is, I'm all for it. This show, so far, 2 episodes in, is one of the best written comic book shows I've seen in a long time. I'm counting the Marvel Disney Plus shows and especially the DC shows with Peacemaker and all that. I think this blows it out of the water because in spite the fact that you have these lanterns who can fly, who can manifest things out of sheer willpower and all this here, the magical superhero elements of this show. At its core, it is grounded. It is a very grounded show with just superhero elements sprinkled on it. That's not the main thing. Actually, I could care less about them flying around. And that's how much I'm enjoying the story that's being told here. And the acting on this show is phenomenal. Kyle Chandler, I know at one point Josh Brolin was in talks. He actually was very close to getting the role, but he eventually dropped out of it. But and I think somebody else too before they actually settled on Kyle Chandler. Bruh, Kyle Chandler was perfectly cast as Hal Jordan. He is murdering this role, man. I love him in this role. He brings a uniqueness to it. He is so unserious, but at the same time, super smart and very serious in his goal. He is focused on solving this mystery, but he's doing it in his own unique way that you can't help but enjoy him. I enjoy every single scene that he's in. There's not a scene that he has been a part of where I'm like, man, let's get to Aaron Pierre, who I'm also enjoying, who is also born to play Jon Stewart. He is perfectly cast as Jon Stewart. But I love Kyle Chandler in this role. And when you put them both in the scene together, when they're both together doing their thing, their chemistry and dynamic is second to none. Look, I know we're only 2 episodes in. I know this. And I know the wheels can quickly fall off because we've bear witness to that multiple times. But all I can speak on is what I've seen so far. And so far, Lanterns has knocked it out of the park. My only question mark, as I've noted last week in my review of the pilot episode, was that time jump when we find out Hal Jordan dies 10 years later. And, you know, it was a instant reaction that I probably should have took a little time before I, really said something about it, because I was really on the fence with it. I got it, but I didn't want to get it. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things. And now I'm like, cool. I'm cool with it. And I have zero problems with this show and how it's structured and how it's written and how it's directed. That action sequence with when Jon Stewart got abducted and they were fighting in the van and they fell out the van in the middle of traffic on an interstate or a highway was just beautifully shot. I thought that was one of the most exciting action sequences you can do in that particular situation. You know what I'm saying? It didn't feel CG heavy. It didn't feel like they were on a sound stage or anything like that. It felt practical. And that's my love letter, my love language, I should say. I love practical stunts and effects. I am, once you do that, you pretty much have me hooked. Deeply enjoyed the second episode of Lanterns. It got me even more hooked than I did in the first episode. Like I said before, we didn't get that time jump. I was expecting to get a time jump to kind of concurrently do these little mysteries where we're trying to solve what's going on in 2016 as well as 2026 at the same time, because that is a big mystery. Not just Hal Jordan being murdered, but the fact that his ring is missing. I saw something online that somebody said, oh no, that Guy Garner has the ring. Well, no, that still wouldn't make sense, because Guy Garner already has the ring. In Superman and Peacemaker, he already has a ring. So it wouldn't make sense for him to have Hal Jordan's ring as well. So it's kind of weird that was put out there. I think the writers put that out there. If they did, they really fumbled on that one. That just doesn't make a lick of sense. But anyways, yeah, really enjoyed this episode. I want to know, what are your theories? Who do you think the Manhunter could be? Do you think it's Martian Manhunter, John Jones, that is hiding out in Nebraska? Or do you think it's somebody else, another Manhunter? Now, Martian Manhunter is the last Manhunter, theoretically. But we find out in the comics that there are more. You know, they're just scattered all over the galaxy. There's not too many of them. But is this that Manhunter? Is it him? Is it somebody else? And if it is, who is the Manhunter? Is it somebody that's on the show, or is it somebody we have yet to meet? I would love to know your thoughts. Subscribe to the KBRadioNetwork.com website, where you can be notified of new episodes that drops on the website, as well as listen to previous episodes here on the KB Radio Network. Also, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and like this video while you're there. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for the review of episode 2, Trust Fall, from DC Studios' Lanterns. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.